I think that goes in line. So this next part here is about the support that's available out there for first-time buyers. Now, there's a few schemes that come and go, depending who's in government and what budget is on the horizon coming up in April. So I'm going to bring up these schemes here. Shared ownership is a real big one for first-time buyers. Maybe can't afford a full purchase property or on lower incomes. Mick, just want to tell us a bit more about shared ownership,
Yeah, so
how it works.
again, it's quite a there's a lot to a shared ownership scheme, but ultimately you can't earn more than £80,000 either individually or as a couple. And what you do is you buy a percentage of the property. So minimum, I think it's still. Oh no, I think it's just been reduced actually. I believe it's 20% now of a property that you can buy. And what you then do is rent the other, let's say it was 20%, you can rent the other 80% from the housing association with a view to, in a lot of scenarios, not everyone, but in most, that you can staircase and buy more of the property as the years go on, so that you no longer either have to pay rent to the housing association if you pay off the whole thing. But what it is, it's a hybrid model, if you like, of owning and renting your house. And generally speaking, if you look at the last couple of decades, it is cheaper than renting overall.
And generally, it's a good way of getting on the ladder because we've seen a lot of first-time buyers come in on shared ownership, then they move on to a full purchase after because they can gain the profit in the property price if it goes up, but they're also reducing the mortgage balance, aren't they? Because they're repaying it. So good way of getting on the ladder. And I think it will become more and more popular over the next few years. The next one, not so well. Help to Buy is out there, but it's finished unless you are now in Wales. So it is available. There's talks of bringing it back, and that's where you get a bit of help from the government. But there is still the lifetime ISA out there, Nick. So that's like a savings plan, isn't it? Want to elaborate a little bit more on that? You get a bonus, don't you?
Yeah, so every April, they apply a 25% bonus. So it is fantastic. You can use your lifetime ISA towards either a home or your retirement. Now, as a first-time buyer, you're probably thinking my home's a little bit more kind of on the horizon than retirement. We won't go into retirement. That's probably a whole different kettle of fish. But yeah, as a first time buyer, it's fantastic because you can get 25% bonus on everything you've saved up to £4,000 a year, whilst getting £1,000 from the government. Now,
I'd say it's
you're
a
not
great
going to get
start,
that.
isn't it? Bit of a no-brainer
Fantastic.
to start saving into a lifetime ISA, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
Subject to saving accounts that you've got because you've got to make sure you qualify for it.
Yeah.
We put it on there. It's not so common, but Resale Price Covenant. It's where some housing associations or councils can offer properties at a reduced price. So they may knock off 20 to 30% of a property price to make it more affordable for people that live in the area. Best way of finding out about them and shared ownership is probably contacting your local housing associations. So just find their details online. You can register your interest and come on to their mailing lists. And when you register, they will check that you qualify for their schemes. And I'm pretty sure there'll be some new schemes coming soon. So that's always some good advice to register with the local associations. Probably one of the most common ones we're coming across. Do you want to take this one away? It used to be called a guarantor mortgage. It's a little bit different. However, it's generally a similar answer, isn't it?
So it's literally a change of name, to be honest, but it's more stringent than it used to be. So Joint Borrower Sole Proprietor is where it's a very fancy way of saying you could have a family member jump on the mortgage with you to increase your affordability. There are lots of kind of ins and outs to a joint borrower sole proprietor mortgage or guarantor mortgage, but ultimately it is exactly that. So they can come onto the mortgage, help you with your affordability, but always worth noting their age will be taken into account, and also kind of any outgoings they may have. So it can be fantastic, and we've achieved some absolutely amazing things for people doing joint borrower sole proprietor mortgages, because what it also does is means that you haven't got to pay the additional rate stamp duty for having someone who might already own a home on the mortgage. And that, of course, can be, well, it's 3% on top of whatever stamp duty you might have to pay. So if your property was £500,000, you'd have your normal stamp duty, and then you would have an additional £15,000 on top if you just had a joint mortgage with someone who already owned a house. But under Joint Borrower Sole Proprietor, that £15,000 wouldn't be charged. So it is a brilliant scheme.
Yeah, so ultimately, it can be friends as well now. We've got lenders that will do it, but I suppose the most common way is a family member backing up your mortgage, maybe getting to borrow a little bit more. If for some reason you struggled, they'd be liable for it. But it allows you to buy a property maybe that you can't reach right now, but you have a robust plan to take over in the future. Is the gist of it, yeah?
Yeah.
And the last one. Was a little,
so there's
because this is the attention grabbing one that we get asked about a lot, and there's schemes coming out daily at the minute for this.
So obviously people have probably seen some bits and pieces in the news. There's not much to be said about the old 1% mortgage yet. Want to make that very clear. Nothing's been kind of set in stone. So, but we will no doubt do another one of these where we explain that in more depth. But to some degree, where one lender or a couple of lenders have already beaten that and have got a 0% deposit mortgage. So you have actually got where if you've been renting for at least 12 months, one lender will go, well, as long as the new mortgage is less than your rent, we'll lend you the money. As long as what you're borrowing is cheaper than what your current rent is, and it could be literally by a penny, then that is completely acceptable. They will allow you to buy a property with no deposit whatsoever. So the only thing you'd have to find money for is your solicitor's costs, somewhere between £1,500 and £2,000, and you could own your home with no deposit. There's also another scheme by a smaller building society where you can use the collateral in one of, it's normally kind of first relative, so parents, brother, sister. You can use the collateral in their home, the equity in their home, to subsequently almost act as a deposit without physically putting it down. And they effectively are guaranteeing that mortgage by saying, well, we'll put up 20% of our house as a value. And you can also, so you can do it that way as well. So again, zero deposit, but your, family are effectively putting up that collateral in the background.
Yeah. So, these changes in the market, I suppose, are positive for first-time buyers. There are some drawbacks, but it's something that we can work out very quickly whether you will qualify for it or if you have any inquiries around it, because you also need to work out what the monthly payment is. Is there a property in your budget for that? But there's a lot of change coming up on low deposits, and it can only be a good thing because most borrowers think it's got to be a 10% deposit, but it doesn't. It can be lower. And there's a new scheme that's came out on Friday where not all the details have been released, but if you buy a new build, there is an incentive coming out where a builder can offer you cash back to help reduce your monthly payments if you buy a new build. Now, only Barratt have signed up to that at the minute, which no doubt the other nationals builders will sign up to, but that's definitely one to look out for, isn't it?
I think they're signing up by the hour, from what I checked today. So